I'm Homi Bhabha. I'm the Rothenberg Professor of the Humanities at Harvard University. Welcome to my exp. You know, when you asked me to think about this question in relation to these large categories of globalization, colonialism, anti-colonialism, I began to think about the limits of this kind of nominalism. And that's how we get contained in a particular history. But these are very limited issues, partly because I believe that the question of periods and ages where historians feel at home, people are made to think that they were at home, are very complicated. Look, it seems to me that transition is a much better discursive or analytic time frame than thinking of ages and periods which are all neatly labeled and we thought we knew what the world was like. How enlightened was the Enlightenment? Here you have a time when concepts of citizenship are in the West, concepts of nation and responsibility are beginning to be formulated in a really effective way, in a liberal way, and at the same time you have empire and subject peoples who are not citizens. And you have John Stuart Mill saying, I am a democrat in my country and a despot in somebody else's country, i.e. India. What does that make of me? How post-colonial is post-colonialism? Here again, you have remnants of the anti-colonial movement as part of the nationalist movements. You have at the same time issues of an emergent bourgeois power group of privilege. You have many of the problems of the earlier period, inequality, injustice, poverty still continuing. And then you have the further entanglement of having hegemonic financial structures, what people call the Washington Consensus or the IMF, intervening in this moment. And you have people like Joseph Stiglitz saying that this is a period that is very reminiscent of the neo-colonial. So who is at home there? And finally, I thought, who is at home? What is globalization and how global is it? And who is at home in globalization? Here you have, on the one hand, the circulations of goods, finances, major conventions are established for trade. At the same time, you have ethno-nationalist groups which are emerging at the leadership level, which do not allow the free passage of people, and at the same time boost a certain kind of religious nationalism or racial nationalism, which is deeply provincial, deeply problematic, and against the spirit of any kind of global cosmopolitanism. So I ask you, in what sense can we ever be at home and not feel displaced or homeless at the same time, conceptually, politically, psychically? So we go from law and rationality in the Enlightenment, roughly we go to the question of progress, then we go to the question of independence, then, as I said, with Stiglitz, to begin to think about post-colonialism and the issue of the international financial structures and also the international governmental and political forces, and then you begin to have a kind of neo-colonialism within post-colonialism. And then, with the liberalization of markets, the Soviet Union coming apart, you begin to get a sense of globalization, and again, a sort of notion of the triumphalism of market capitalism, which was always it was always suggested a form of modernization, so it was a form of progress. And then, of course, when that begins to happen, slowly, with that boast of progress, with the boast of a kind of the success of the West and Western ideologies of liberalism, you start having the growth globally of ethno-nationalism. I think what is fascinating is that in each of these moments, as we shift from these different paradigms, there is a group that is being created. Every time somebody talks about a new national territory, you have displaced people, migrants and minorities. You have displaced people like migrants and minorities at the moment of the announcement of progress or the sense of the achievement of progress. And you have this displaced population that is being continually produced. And by being produced, it is creating a greater sense of authoritarianism amongst the governments and the leaders. But at the same time, the continual production of these groups of people, minorities, makes us question the notion of the nation, the notion of progress, the notion of development. And now what do we see? Minorities as the excluded group, we have them all over the world. Muslims in India, Mexicans in the US, Kurds in Turkey, Hindus in Pakistan, Palestinians in Israel, refugees always, women invariably, LGBTQ groups inevitably, dissidents always in a minority and always persecuted, and migrant workers routinely used and abused and dismissed.